All right, everyone, we got to talk about more Twitter censorship, but more attempts to deperson. In this case, wired sources, which it's like not even edgy. So this had to be an example, probably of brigading. There's like a 99% chance that this wasn't Twitter consciously decided to screw someone for political reasons, so much as it was, hey, the page, because of what it posted, got targeted by maybe some social justice warriors, actually. There is an auto-suspension feature on Twitter. And of course, this has become a major problem. It's specifically the institution of this sort of automated system on sites that weren't using them that has actually caused a significant increase in political and social trolling, to the point where a lot of people are doing the craptivism thing. They organize raids because it works. They've incentivized raiding on their own platforms. Some of them are probably in denial that this has happened. Second to this, I'd say you should definitely go on Gab. Twitter is steadily committing suicide now as a platform. I no longer have faith that it's even going to be there in a couple of years. Now, so while it's useful as a notification machine, which is what I originally intended to use it for, now Gab, Minds, BitChute, some of these other sites are better, considerably better than Twitter. They're becoming more functional and more stable over time. Certainly the case with Gab. Over 16,000 people are following me there. Link in the description. We got to talk about wired sources specifically. Now, what do they represent? It's essentially a news service, kind of alt media, not completely. It's sort of in that missing link media on the good guy side of the missing link media. What does that represent? It'd be like InfoWars. The missing link media is any non-fully corporatized, it's not legacy media. It's not some 90s era cable firm. It's specifically internet generation, but it is a business entity as opposed to the true alt media, which is individuals. When I say missing link media, I don't necessarily mean it in a disparaging way. There are services there, the Daily Wire, some of these others, that can be useful. I think wired sources definitely being one of them. Drudge technically would be part of this. Now, keep in mind, what do they fundamentally do? It's like when Drudge posts. For the most part, they're posting links to other news stories. They just have, it's basically an aggregator more than it is a news service. The journalism that Matt Drudge himself conducts is less than the amount of material on the site by far. That's sort of what wired services is. So this had to be like brigading, because they don't really post. It's not like they do write-ups and they're like, well, 9 reasons you should vote for the Nazi party and put it on Twitter to get banned. Apparently, what preceded this immediately was Elizabeth Warren, I believe, a sort of a secret, quote-unquote secret, aka not authorized to be recorded, I suppose, although I don't think security at that event had to be particularly high. Her talking about the Kavanaugh case and how basically it was an opening to stop the SCOTUS appointee when the allegations came through. That could be seen as fake news, I suppose, but, it's Elizabeth Warren in her own words. Does it really matter what title is affixed to it? The legacy media does this all the time. And let me point something else out really quick. Let me ask a rhetorical question here. Why would it matter even if you habitually posted literal tabloids, like literal gossip rags that 99% of the time were smears and absolute hit jobs and weren't true? Like, what if you constantly post the Weekly World News, or you post like Babylon Bee as though it was a real news story to fool people? What's the difference between that being strictly a tabloid and something like CNN or the New York Times? What's one of the big headlines of a couple days ago? Oh, The Last Jedi got poor ratings because of Russian trolls. Straight Cold War propaganda. It's absolutely not the case. It's totally fake news. It will come to be seen as part of a moral panic of fake news and bullshit conspiracy theories 20, 30 years from now. And people like myself at the time will be exonerated despite the fact that we get flack now for pointing out that it's fake news. That can be posted freely. You have some hit piece. The article there from Data Society. It's absolutely untrue. It's straight up defamatory towards some of the content. A lot of it is pure speculation that, again, fits into the moral panic. Nobody has a problem if it gets posted, though. It gets spread far and wide. People are more likely to get harassed or challenged on going against the report and saying, no, look, here's 9 reasons why it's bullshit. And you got this problem on Twitter as well. But the biggest problem on the platform isn't even the rules themselves. I've echoed this now for over a year with regards to YouTube. The biggest problem on YouTube, even by the time of Limited State and Adpocalypse 2.0, The biggest problem was a perceived discrepancy in how the rules are applied to people, and the lack of transparent rulemaking in the first place. Like, instead of having a fairly ironclad set of rules, like, you cannot post nudity, you cannot post drug use or something, everything became a gray area, an amorphous, malleable soup of some random moderator who may be just new on the job making a snap decision over whether something violates a set of rules that are no longer cut and dry. That's really been a problem there, and unfortunately, whereas before, prior to the rise of the use of priority creator status, actually, anyone who was verified and had a substantial audience was presumed innocent until proven guilty. It didn't matter if you got mass raided. Nothing's going to get taken down. There was no bot algorithm imposed in order to take things down automatically. Twitter actually was the first to sort of move to a system where they made their rules less cut and dry. They started using discernment as opposed to using an actual sort of set of criteria. They started using bots and so forth. Twitter sort of originates that. YouTube adapted it later, and it's led to destabilization on parts of YouTube. What you've got is that creators who for years and years knew, hey, if YouTube fundamentally has a problem with my material, I'm probably going to get forewarning. They're not just randomly going to kick me off. Because, I mean, look, I got like 250,000 subscribers, 100,000 subscribers, maybe 1 million subscribers. I've been here for 8-9 years. The tendency is they're going to assume that I'm innocent. Or on Twitter, think about the verification badge. Think about the term verification and what it actually intones. That term is plausibly correct for the original use, which is, hey, this person is who they say they are. We can verify that they are who they say they are, and they're significant enough that that's important. You shouldn't call it a verification badge anymore. It should be called a validation badge. Twitter has validated that person's content and determined that it endorses it. It literally has become nothing more than Twitter's way of endorsing an individual's viewpoints in a rationalized manner. So as opposed to like Amrin or something like that, it's like, no, we don't want, but we do endorse Sarah Jiang, who literally breaks the Twitter terms of service on like a bi-weekly basis. Doesn't get kicked off, still verified, always will be, because they are a priority creator that comes from a corporate culture. Fellow corporation makes Twitter more money than any small-time individual alt-media commentator, even if they've got more fans than Jiang will ever have. Makes them less money. New York Times makes them a lot of money because it happens to use their service and a lot of people follow them there. A lot of clicks, a lot of likes, a lot of spread of the material on the platform. I would say Twitter's become very problematic. At this point, it's like, I don't care. If I got banned off of Twitter, I wouldn't even bother appealing it probably at this point. It really has become that shitty a platform. It's like, in a couple of years, will it still exist? Once a site begins to go into any steady degree of decline, it tends to become worthless very quickly. For anyone who's like me, they want to be on the cutting edge of news. I'm not going to fucking waste my time even shitposting on Twitter if it's a declining platform. I'm going to go where the going's good. I'm going to get on Gab and Minds and all these sites where, honestly, my audience is growing astronomically compared to on Twitter. On Twitter, it's like you fight to notch up 10 people that are following you on a weekly basis. It really has become that, sort of humdrum. And it's not just, by the way, because of algorithmic manipulation or shadow bans or post limitation. Those certainly don't help. It's really become about the fact that more and more people are reluctant to either keep their Twitter accounts or make a new one, and that Jack seems to think it's a good idea to kick millions of people off. Sometimes these individuals are marked as bots without being bots. That's really what it's about. You have a shrinking number of people on the platform. If a platform is growing and you're not growing, there's a problem. It's like when you look at YouTubers and they're hemorrhaging subscribers. That's pretty bad for your brand. But if you're losing people on Twitter, nobody gives a fuck because Twitter's losing people. So it's like, okay, the pond is shrinking. At most, I'd probably break even if I had slow growth before. That's basically where I am on Twitter. At some point, Twitter is going to become one of my minor presences. It won't be that many more months before the number of people following me on Gab and Minds is probably greater anyway. At that point, why do I even have Twitter? It's sort of like Facebook. Why? There's a reason. And Facebook isn't technically in full decline. It's just sort of stagnant. On Facebook, it's like you fight to have 10 extra people care about your content on that platform, even if you're putting some effort into it. I actually put, unique content on Twitter. And it doesn't really get me any return. It's just basically a fun place to shitpost. Well, I can think of a dozen other places that I'd rather shitpost at this point. Meanwhile, they're kicking off all of the interesting content, like InfoWars is gone. Wired Sources, which I did follow, is now gone. That was a major one. Wired Sources was sort of one of the go-to places. If you wanted some of that, I mean, it aggregates stuff from other sites. It doesn't just post its own material. A lot of these sites, like the Daily Wire, most of what they post, it's from the Daily Wire or people associated with the Daily Wire, as opposed to Wired Sources, basically a Drudge-style aggregator for the Twitter era. Yeah, or formerly the Twitter era. Now it's like the Gab era, I suppose. So, yeah, it's sad to see someone go, but it's like at this point, getting banned off Twitter is no longer a big deal. Like maybe a few years ago, it's like, oh my God, they got banned off Twitter. Now it's like, oh, another one? Yeah, as though it has destroyed. Has being banned from Twitter ever destroyed anyone's career? With the exception of InfoWars, which had already been banned everywhere else too. And even then, InfoWars is still, they're able to function. They're not having a problem. Therein lies the state of things. Twitter is no longer really necessary to anyone to work as a notification machine when there are other sites capable of doing that and much more. So another one bites the dust, but it's like, at some point Twitter is going to bite the dust too. So nobody really cares. That's about all. Peace out.